time tracker area, basic. Okay, in this video we're going to go over the time tracker area and cover all the basics of the telephone timekeeping process. So to start out, click on time tracker at the top. And what I want to show you first is this screen under admin called clock in procedure. And this is just an informational screen. There's not really a lot to do here, but it goes through the process of what an employee would do to clock in and out, and that really defines this area. So the first thing they're going to do is call the 800 number here, and when they call in, it's going to go through these three prompts and ask them a series of these questions, and they'll have to respond with the correct pins in order to get clocked in or clocked out. So the system needs to know essentially three things. The first thing it needs to know is that they work for you. Everyone's going to call into the same number, whether it doesn't matter who it is. Everyone who uses time tracker calls this number. So it has to know what company they work for. So that's done with the company ID. Your company ID will be displayed in a couple different spots. If you come to the clock in procedures, it will be shown here. It's also shown from if you click on time tracker. I'm sorry, it's from the dashboard. If you click on dashboard, it's right at the very front screen, company ID. So that's the very first prompt, company ID. You'll enter that in. The next thing it needs to know is who they are, and that's defined by the PIN number, which we explained in our employees video, and that's the 4 to 6 digit number that represents them. That'll be unique to every employee, and it'll have to be entered. And the third thing is where they're at, and that's what we call our customer ID or our TT ID, and that information is displayed under the customer information. Each customer has their own 4 to 6 digit number. So this process, and what this is saying here, is this process can actually be eliminated down to just step number 2 if you use caller IDs. So if the system has caller IDs filled in, then it's going to recognize that caller ID number, and it's going to be able to jump past step number 1, and it'll know that that number is for your company. It'll still ask for the PIN number, and then based on settings of how you have the caller ID set up, it can actually jump past step number 3 as well and automatically clock the employee in at that location. There is a couple other unique things about clock-in procedures. Number 1 is that you can add a 4th step here that answers the question, what are you doing? And that's under the service codes. So service codes by default are turned off, but you can come in here and you can add in your own service codes. They're 3-digit numbers, and we kind of advise people to start out with maybe 100, 200, 300, and so on. And again, they're going to define what are you doing. So that'll be specific for your business. Here's the one way that we train people whether you would need service codes or not. If you have an employee that goes to the same location and does different jobs, then service codes might help you track that. If you don't need to track an employee at the same place doing different work, then you don't need this. We're going to have a video on service codes because you get into some pay rate information and how that can affect it and how you would use that. So it's a little bit more advanced. But for right now, know that that is an option that you can do. So back to the clock-in procedures. There are other numbers that are available and other ways to use numbers depending on your business. So the first thing you can do is if you, when you set up your company, you're going to designate a single time zone. If you have locations across the country and you need to track different time zones, then you can use different numbers to do that. These numbers here will force the caller into those time zones. You can also do local numbers and specialty numbers, and this would be for if you had a large group of people in one city. We can set up local numbers for you, and we have some local numbers already set up in some different cities. But ultimately, we can also have different custom features set up, with specific numbers. This number is specifically for scheduling information. So that's the basics on the clock-in procedure. Obviously, that's going to put us into once someone clocks in, now what do we do with it? So if we click on the Today screen, this is going to show us a list of everything that's going on at this moment, and this is a live screen. Right now we just have a single record in here that shows that this employee is at this location and they clocked in at 9 a.m. There's obviously no out time right now, so it's not doing any totals. If we edited this shift, we can go to edit and add, and we can actually find this shift and we could edit it. Oops, let me jump here real quick and unlock it. That was done before I meant to get there. So we could edit this shift and we could put an end time on it of say 5 p.m. We could update that, and now when we come back, it's going to give us our totals and display that for us, and we'll always get a totals for the page. So this first menu, edit and add, is simply for that. We can also manually add a clock in if we had to do that. We can put a start time and an end time and fill that information out if for some reason someone was unable to clock in with the phone system and you had to manually enter it. The other features on here, no show alerts. We'll discuss this when we talk about e-schedules. And then archived. Time Tracker does not delete any of its data, but we do archive our data after 4 months. So you'll have to come into different screens in order to get that and view it. The approval process. If you're a larger company and you have multiple people helping out with this process of checking times and getting times prepared for payroll, then the approval process is nice for that. What this does is allows you to quickly manipulate a time, and it's a live screen, so as you change things you don't need to refresh in order for that to be saved. As soon as you leave that field, it is saved. But it also gives you the ability to what we call approve, which is this shift was done before I came in here, where if you click the shield, it will change to a blue color and everything's locked out. I can't make any more adjustments. And I can't make adjustments from here or anywhere else, and that's what I was having trouble with a minute ago. If I come back to this screen, you'll notice that there's no edit button here anymore. It's locked out. And that's because this shift has been approved and it's not able to be changed anymore, saying that it's ready for payroll. If you do have to change something, you can come back into the approval screen and unlock it, make your adjustment or your change, and then relock it. Every time this shield has been locked, it's going to track who did that and when they did it, so that you have a record of that. The payroll process. This area we will cover under its own video, but the basics of it, if you're just trying to get simple payroll out, you can just click on the simple payroll, run a quick report, and it will give you information per employee with totals. It will add pay in if you've used pay. And again, it shows you who approved it and when. So simple payroll is very, very simple, obviously. We'll get into the dashboard and exporting and all that kind of stuff in a different video. Budgetary. We have a couple different budget reports. These are going to be all different reports that you can run on timekeeping data. Everything from a full budget. Again, these are going to be all grouped by your customer versus a payroll report being grouped by the employee. Budget reports are all grouped by your customer and given that data that way. Other things under the admin tab. The caller ID list. This is one way you can get in here and manage all of your caller IDs in one location versus customer by customer. We'll go over caller ID. We have a really short, quick video on how to set up caller IDs that will go into this in more detail. Clock in prompts. This is just an information page to go over what the prompts are going to be when someone calls in. We do offer all of the prompts and all of the services in English and Spanish, but this is kind of just a tree structure of what happens when someone calls in. They get their company ID. If it errors, here's what it says. And then they ask their PIN number. If it errors, this is what it says, and so on and so forth. And then some different menus for some specialty stuff. And the final thing is clock in logs. This screen is a very powerful screen. I don't think I have a lot of data in here that I can show, but let me see if I can go back and find something. What it is a list of every single call that comes into the system, and it shows you what happened during that call. So ideally, the way that you would use this screen is you would find the caller ID that someone called in from. So if this was the number that they called in from, because this is obviously going to have a lot of information on this screen. You would set a date range of when you thought that call came in or when those calls came in, and you would narrow it down to where you find the exact call you're looking for. And then you can try to figure out what went wrong and where they went wrong. If something did go wrong, this would say failed, meaning that they did not complete the process. If it says completed, it means they made it through all the steps and then the system hung up on them. So first step, get company ID. This shows that this caller entered in 2450, which was correct, and it passed. Then it jumped to get PIN. It showed they entered 1234 and it passed. If it failed, if any of these failed, it would show you that, and it would show their second entry or their second attempt. This is showing that customer or service code's not required on this company, and ultimately the person was clocked in and it passed. Let me see if I can find one that has failed. A fail like this means that the person entered the company ID and they hung up. So that's not truly showing me a fail. Okay, here we go. So this is a fail where they entered the company ID correctly, they entered the PIN number correctly, but they're getting a caller ID mismatch, and so they tried to enter a customer that caller ID is set up on, and it failed. So this can show you that. So this would be an example of how you could help someone figure out what they were doing wrong and why they weren't able to get into the system and clock in. Again, that's all under clock-in procedures. So that's the basics for the time tracker area and getting people to be able to clock in, and then also being able to view the data and get it back out. One thing I didn't show you is if you see this little Excel icon, which will appear at the bottom of most of the menus, this is a button that you can click on, and it will Excel file of whatever you're looking at here. And then you can jump into Excel and you can manipulate that data in Excel if you would prefer to do that. So keep an eye out for that Excel icon as well. Thanks for watching.